You ever have one of those mornings where the coffee's perfect, the breeze is just right, and for one blissful second you think the universe finally cut you a break? Yeah, that was me right before Karen stormed into my yard like she owned the place, hollering that my hedges were apparently threatening the very existence of our neighborhood. No knock, no. Hey, how's it going? Just a banshee wail about property values and bylaws. I swear only in suburbia can a few bushes set off World War III. And in that instant, two things clicked. One, Karen was without question absolutely out of her mind. And two, if she wanted a war over my hedges, she was about to get one for the ages. There she stood, gripping her clipboard like a police baton, eyes all squinty and dramatic. The kind of anger you only see in self-declared HOA presidents who rewrite the rule book every time someone parks crooked. I almost laughed. I mean, really, threatening to call the sheriff and drag me to court over hedges that hadn't even peeked past my property line. But I kept my cool and let her rant, throwing around community aesthetics like she drafted the Constitution herself. I asked her, "You got a ruler?" "Karen, 'cause last I checked, these hedges weren't trespassing on HOA land." She flushed. Red had zero proof, just her overblown ego. You could feel it. That was the match. The spark. Suddenly, neighbors peeking out from behind curtains, recording us on their phones like this was some kind of pay-per-view event. And Karen, she couldn't stand being challenged, especially not with an audience. That's the thing about folks who build their whole identity on control. They can't handle a single dent. What followed? Oh, it was like living in a bad sitcom. Our quiet street turned into a minefield of sticky notes, threats of fines, angry letters taped to my door. Karen strutted up and down the block with a walkie-talkie like she was patrolling the DMZ instead of a bunch of ranch-style houses. She called the sheriff on me twice in a week. Once claiming my hedges were blocking traffic, the nearest stop sign's 2 football fields away, and another time accusing me of harboring vermin because she saw a squirrel. I kid you not. Even the deputies tried not to laugh. "Sorry, we gotta check these complaints," one muttered, rolling his eyes so hard I thought they'd stick. That's when I started keeping records. Every note, every insult, every sideways glance. Because this was never about landscaping, it was about power, and Karen was the kind of person who'd torch the place before she admitted she lost. Still, I'll give her this. She was entertaining. Once in the middle of a rainstorm, she stomped across my lawn with her umbrella, snapping, demanding I trim my hedges that very second. I just stood inside sipping my tea, waving at her through the window as she sunk into the mud. Another time, she cornered our poor mailman to whine about blocked sidewalks only for him to point out the sidewalk was totally clear. The whole neighborhood started talking grocery store whispers, driveway gossip, and you could tell her obsession was backfiring. People saw her for what she was, a petty tyrant. But none of that stopped her because in Karen's mind, she was order and I was chaos, the one threat she hadn't bent to her will. So the HOA calls a board meeting, right? I went curious to see the spectacle. Karen opens with a full-blown slideshow, blurry photos of my yard. Dramatic arrows, captions about dangerous shrubbery. It was so ridiculous I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I stayed calm, pointed out the hedges were on my land and well within city code. But Karen, she started shouting, veins bulging, while the other board members just stared at the table, embarrassed to be caught in the blast zone. No resolution, just a promise of escalation. Suddenly, I'm getting letters threatening $1,000 fines, wild claims about reduced property values, even a foreclosure warning. Over hedges. My phone buzzed nonstop with HOA calls, each one a different board member reciting Karen's script like bad actors. At this point, the hedges weren't just plants. They were a line in the sand. And it became obvious the street was splitting into 2 camps, those who backed Karen out of fear and the silent ones who'd shoot me a thumbs up at the gas station, quietly rooting for me to win. I saw the cracks forming in Karen's armor, but I knew she wasn't done. Obsession like hers, it feeds on itself. Then came the measuring day. I wake up and there's 3 board members on my lawn, clipboards and cameras in hand, measuring tape stretched from curb to shrub like they're surveying a crime scene. Karen's barking orders demanding evidence. I stepped out and asked if they had a warrant. She waved the HOA bylaws at me like that gave her the right to run my life. A few days later, official-looking letters showed up stamped with the HOA seal, accusing me of breaking every clause in the book, most of which she'd just rewritten to target me. Suddenly, there's a rule about no hedge taller than 3 feet, even though the handbook said 6 when I bought the place. It was all just made up as she went along. The threats kept escalating. Now it's liens, legal action, community blight. She'd gone from nosy neighbor to full-on stalker, and even the board was starting to shift in their seats. But you know what? I decided I'd had enough of playing defense, so I went on the offense. I hit up the county office, pulled property deeds, zoning laws, city ordinances, everything that proved my hedges were 100% legal. Buried in the paperwork, I found a little nugget. The HOA itself had been cited in the past for failing to maintain the common areas. Oh, the irony. Armed with facts, I wrote my own letters, calm, lawyerly, each one sent not just to the HOA but to City Hall and the county attorney. Karen was on notice and she hated it. She doubled down, tried to get neighbors to file complaints. Some did, mostly the ones who'd gotten special favors over the years. But more and more folks started questioning why so much energy was spent on my hedges while the real issues, potholes, broken streetlights, got ignored. One day Karen called the sheriff yet again. This time, I handed the deputy my binder of legal docs and harassment letters. He shook his head, told her the sheriff's department wasn't her personal muscle, and left. The look on Karen's face, priceless, pure humiliation. But make no mistake, the constant battle took its toll. Contractors refused to work for me, friends joked about needing permission slips to visit, and quiet nights on the porch became a thing of the past. But instead of breaking me, it steeled my resolve. I started planning, plotting, not just how to end this, but how to make sure Karen could never rise again. That's when the idea for the cinder block barrier hit me. Not out of rage, but clarity. A fortress along the property line, something so solid she'd regret ever opening her mouth about my foliage. At first, it was a joke in my head, but the more Karen pushed, the more I wanted to make it real. I sketched designs, pored over city code, talked to a retired lawyer neighbor who, bless him, was thrilled to help. Finding a crew was tricky. A lot of contractors knew Karen by reputation. One even told me he'd never work on my street again. But I found a tough bunch who were happy for the challenge. We drank sweet tea on the porch, mapped out the plan 4 foot high, a foot thick, right where the hedges were. Word spread. By the time the blocks were delivered, half the street had picked a side. Karen nearly fainted when she saw the pallets. She shrieked about violations, threatened emergency HOA meetings, stormed off muttering about legal action. The crew just laughed. One even joked I should build her a bunker. The sound of mortar and cinder blocks was pure music. Neighbors brought lawn chairs, treated it like a block party. Karen called the city inspector. He checked the paperwork, shrugged, and left. The look on her face was something I'll never forget. She wasn't done, though. The next morning, nails scattered across the driveway, a sabotaged tire. Later, someone canceled my cinder block order pretending to be me. You can probably guess who. I tightened things up, warned the supplier, and kept building. The wall rose, and with it, community support. Even the fence sitter started admitting the street looked better. Karen went nuclear, called emergency meetings, tried to ban walls retroactively. Her few loyalists raised their hands, but everyone else rolled their eyes. Then came the twist. Karen brought in an outside lawyer, filed a cease and desist, demanded I demolish the wall. I hit back with permits, ordinances, photos, the whole 9 yards. CC'd the mayor's office for good measure. The lawyer disappeared. Karen's speeches at city council became local comedy. Even the paper started calling it the Great Wall of Suburbia. But Karen's not the retreating kind. One night, security cameras caught her trying to vandalize the wall, hammer in hand, swinging away like she could take it down herself. I called the sheriff. She ended up in cuffs, the neighbors watching from their windows, the queen of the HOA brought down by her own obsession. With the lawsuit falling apart and Karen officially banned from HOA office, things changed. We rewrote the rules, scrapped the crazy fines, fixed the sidewalks, even held real community meetings. The wall became a landmark, kids painted murals, families took photos. Folks who'd once stayed silent started speaking up, hosting barbecues, planting flowers. The air was lighter, the laughter real. And you know what the final twist was? In the months of digging through county records, I discovered the HOA had been running on borrowed money loans bundled and sold to a local bank. So I bought the debt quietly through a holding company. One night I stood up at an HOA meeting, handed Karen the papers, and told her the neighborhood's future doesn't depend on your tantrums anymore. The power shift was instant. We reduced dues, started a community fund, and put the HOA back in the hands of the people. Karen made one last scene, waving lawsuits, screaming about federal investigations. But no one listened. The sheriff showed up gently, led her away. And just like that, the tyrant faded into the past. Now every time I walk by that wall, I smile. Not because it's just a barrier, but because it's a monument to what happens when ordinary folks finally say enough. The neighborhood. It's the best it's ever been. Block parties, laughter, a sense of freedom I never thought possible. So let me ask you, what would you have done? Would you have caved, cut the hedges, and kept the peace? Or would you have stood your ground one cinder block at a time until justice finally won out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own stories of standing up to bullies, because if you ask me, that's how real change starts. One neighbor, one act of defiance, one wall at a time.